Welcome everyone to the Logical Advantage Charlotte Tech Talks. Today's Lunch and Learn is titled Attack of Virtual Machines and Websites. My name is Mark Wilson. If you want to find me on any social media websites, you can look up this little name, Developer Infra. Google it with Bing or Bing it with Google, whatever your choice is, and I am at the top of the list. And of course, I work here at Logical Advantage. I'm a senior .NET developer. And as we just mentioned, yes, we're hiring. So don't contact Dan, contact me at that email address right there. And I'll be happy to pass you on to Dan, because then I get the recruiting fee. All right, so let's get started. If you notice in the title, Attack of Virtual Machines and Websites, there is another word that starts with an A that is missing. And the reason for that is, while I am focusing on Azure in this particular presentation, this applies to more than just Azure. You could be using any of the other cloud services to address some of the issues that created this talk. It begins basically with, most of us are consultants or work on projects. You have someone who calls a kickoff meeting. And in that kickoff meeting, a pointy-haired boss.
What-haired boss?
A pointy-haired, Dilbert. We'll just use him. Declares or announces that we're going to start an effort to build a website or a project that will be based in the cloud. And the very first thing as we as consultants generally think is, all right, I need environments. I need a development environment and a test environment, a QA environment, and maybe a pre-production environment, and then a production environment. And you need all these things to do your job. And you might also need, on your machine, maybe you just need Visual Studio or a text editor of your choice, like Sublime or Notepad. But if your project's more involved, say it has any of these things like SharePoint, BizTalk, or that evil S word, Silverlight, you're going to need more. You're going to need, for SharePoint and BizTalk, you're going to need multiple servers. For Silverlight, do you install those bits on your nice, clean, pristine machine? Maybe you don't want to do that. Or maybe the project doesn't even involve any of those. It's something entirely new that you don't have an environment for presently. In case you didn't know, this is called the magnets stack. You might have heard of the mean stack. This is a little bit more extended. So you go to your IT people and you say, I need stuff. Does it take days? Does it take weeks? Does it take a month or longer? Hopefully not years. How long does it take to get what you need so that you can do the job? Because, oh, by the way, did I mention that the project needed to be completed, what is the word? Yesterday, yes. Or maybe not yesterday, but very, very soon. So you're on a limited crunch deadline, and you got to get this done and get going. Well, one thing that you can look at is Microsoft Azure. This is not even a complete list of everything that Azure provides and supports. We're only going to be focusing on the first two, because even the first two I could spend the rest of this week on, and all of these combined, we could probably spend the next month. And I'm sure at some point you're going to want to go home tonight. So we're just going to focus quickly and highlight on a very introductory level what you can do as a website developer with Azure websites and virtual machines. We're going to assume that you haven't done anything. So starting from the beginning, I'm going to show you where you need to go to get started. Then we're going to talk about websites, because I think that's the coolest feature that's offered, or one of the coolest features that's offered. We'll briefly touch on virtual machines, because those are available in, like I said, at multiple different cloud hosts have virtual machines. And then everything can be managed using command line tools. And I'll show you a couple of examples of how that can be done. All right, so getting started, very simple. All you have to do is go out to azure.microsoft.com. And you can actually put, I think, azure.com, and they'll redirect you automatically. Let's go out there just so you can see. Current website looks like this. It changes constantly. So there is a free trial. It is a 30-day trial in which you get $200 to spend on doing things. Now that will give you pretty much a lot of money to play around and get an idea of what you can do. I believe Microsoft priced it this way so that you can test things out, but you can't actually really, for example, go use it for a large compute overnight. You're gonna run out of money pretty quick. But it's fairly easy. Just click the Try Now button, and it'll step you through a process to get registered and log in. I will add a little note. There was previously, when I was registering myself, they were having issues. There's a verification step that involves sending a text message to your cell phone. That wasn't working. So if at any point in time things don't work, simply call the 800 number right here, and they will help you out. They're very wonderful people. It took about a half day to get a free trial set up. Hopefully they got those issues resolved. I think it does. It might ask you for a credit card, but it does not charge you. They're just wanting to do a little authentication against you, confirm you're really somebody rather than a bot, for example. We'll go back. The next thing you need is to download SDKs and command line tools. Those are, after you've registered and after you've downloaded everything, that's all you need. You can start working, playing around, having some fun. And you can see here that the SDKs are offered in a variety of languages. It's not just .NET. So if you prefer Java, Node, PHP, Python, or Ruby, you can use those. I will note Ruby isn't yet supported as an Azure website, but I think they're working on it, and they'll hopefully have it set up soon. But everything else is. You also need, like I mentioned, you need to download 2 command line tools, or you can optionally download 2 command line tools if you want. We'll talk about those a little bit later. And final little word I will mention is that you only pay for what you use. Everything is computed for the most part down to the minute. So in your trial, even outside of your trial, consider shutting things down that you don't need at the end of the workday. You'll save a considerable amount of money. and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so let's talk websites. I mentioned ASP.NET, Node, PHP, and Python. All are supported. Everything that I'm going to do, of course, is .NET, because that's my favorite language of choice. It only takes a few seconds to deploy websites. They're actually one of the fastest things to get up and running. And it's free to start. As a user, you have 10 free websites that you can use for as long as Microsoft offers 10 free websites. And I think they'll do that for quite a while. That's kind of their hook. Great place to, as they say, test out an idea or get something up there and see what you can do and see if it trends. And then once you start, for example, wanting to expand into changing the domain name or adding certain features or need to scale it, then you're going to start paying after that. So we'll show you that in a minute. Oh, let's get going. All right, for Visual Studio 2013, which currently is the latest. Of course, 2015 is in preview. But for 2013, I'll open up a new instance. Depending upon which version you're using will have different ways of interacting with Azure. For 2013, everything is from File, New Project. So you would pick, for example, in this case, a C# website. And let me put it in a folder here. OK. And you can see right here, I'll zoom in, host in the cloud. This is for 2013 and 2015. This is your first ability to make that connection with your code on your machine to something that resides up in Azure. The host in the cloud offers you websites and virtual machines. Pretty self-explanatory. If you just have a website, put it as a website. If you want more control, you can deploy it to a virtual machine. We'll do a website. You do need, as you can see, you need to be signed in to your Azure resources. It's a simple authentication process in Visual Studio, name or email, password, and you're off to go. We're going to cancel this, and I will show you what gets created is you can see these publish scripts over here. This has set up all of the connection information, the URLs, the IDs, the passwords that Visual Studio needs in order to do a web deploy up into Azure. Everything's all set. So when you click on your project and you say publish, you can see that it's got everything set. You can just hit the publish button and it will start sending it up. It copies all of the DLLs and files for you. And it's even nice enough to load the website. And it's done. Like I said, that was what, 5-7 seconds, give or take, plus or minus. Pretty darn quick, as you can see. Granted, this is just a plain old vanilla MVC website. But everything is all set. Very easy process to get going. If you're in Visual Studio 2012, they don't have that off of the File New project. In this case, I've gone ahead and gone through the File New. But when you hit Publish in this particular instance, you're presented with a Windows Azure website from here. And this is where you can then specify either an existing website that you've already created up in Azure, or you can create a new one if you would like. And you can see there's also the ability to create a database. Close. So let's go out to Azure, and you can see this is the website that we just published. And this is the main, this is the, I guess, the current portal, if you will. There's a preview portal, this one here, that they are slowly migrating to and starting to add functionality. Not everything is available here. I haven't found, for example, machine learning on the preview portal, or it's hiding on me. But you can get that here off of this one. There's a lot of really nice monitoring capabilities automatically built in. You can see all of the activity where we published to it and we browsed briefly. So you can get a lot of metrics, very simple metrics. You can configure and scale. There we go. You can specify the different types of languages and whatnot. Scaling. This should be, OK, yes. It created a free website for us. Now, let me explain. All right, the free and shared. There's free and shared. You are on a virtual machine, or you are a website on a virtual machine with other people's websites. Pretty simple. You don't have the ability to scale that beyond one instance. Once you get, or the free you can't scale. Shared, once you switch to shared, you can then say, all right, I want 2 instances of my website. And what Azure will automatically do is load balance that. So if one website for some reason goes down, the other one is still up and running and can still serve your customers. If you want to really take it out of, let's say, a development and test state and put it into production, you might consider shared, or you can go into a reserved state where you're on your own virtual machine. You're not going to be affected by anyone else other than your own good or bad code, however you write. But with reserved, you can also scale it up. And another really cool feature is you can have multiple websites in a reserved instance. So you could have, for example, the customer-facing website, the administration website, and maybe a reporting website, all on the same instance. So its ability to save some money. When you get to shared basic, I guess the reserved is now basic and standard. One of the things that they strongly recommend is, all of us in IT want the most powerful box. So we want multi-core, huge memory. Consider starting small. Start with maybe a small 1 core with 1.75 gigabytes of memory. maybe don't start with that large 4-core box initially. You're going to save some money, and if you've built your website, when you go to the cloud, you got to put some metrics into your website. So you got to know what your demand is, where things are working. There's a little bit of change you have to make. But start small and then scale up. And then the other really cool thing with standard hosting is you can set up a schedule time. So let's say you're a 9 to 5 shop, and that's when all of your customers primarily do business with you. So nights and weekends, you don't need quite as many instances, for example. So they now allow you the ability to say, okay, let's have a different schedule for nights, a different one for weekdays and weekends. And you can set up multiple schedules to say, from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, I want 5 instances, or between 5 and 10 instances, but on the weekend I only want 2 to 5. And then you can specify even, of course, in 9 to 5, and then in the evenings, whatever you want. So they give you a lot of, a lot of functionality out of the box, as you can see, that makes it easy to manage and grow based on whatever your specific user case is.
Can you scale the number of instances based on how many concurrent users you have?
You do it based on basically metrics. So you can do CPU.
Oh, okay.
You could say when down here, when the CPU is running between 60 and 80, for example, that would be the window where it starts thinking about making a change, either scaling up or scaling down.
The 1.75 gig,
Yes.
is that dedicated to you on that virtual machine?
Yes. Yep, that is yours. It is not shared.
Okay.
There is, for basic, you also have the same thing, but once you get to shared, you're on a box and you don't have any dedicated choice. Correct.
And free, what is free? Click on free.
The free's just,
Same.
yep, one instance. That's all you can do.
Do you have any control over the load balancing? If you're building a queue engine and you want to say, I want this message to be processed on that instance, and control.
I don't know. That's a good question. Not sure. My gut says no, but they might have some ability to do traffic manager. Yeah, I think there's a traffic manager feature that might give you that ability. So we can look into that.
Cool.
All right, any other questions before we move on? No? All right. I really think, I really like the Azure Websites concept. It differentiates Microsoft from the other providers, at least currently. And, it's more than just .NET. So.
What's it different from Amazon, for instance?
I don't believe Amazon has a website option. They have virtual machines that you spin up a virtual machine, then you deploy it, and they have Windows and Linux, just like Azure. They have scaling abilities. They have very comparable offerings. But the issue I have with virtual machines is you have to manage that. You have to be that administrator on the box. So you have to apply the patches. You have to make sure that you lock it down properly. Back it up. Whereas with websites, Microsoft or Azure does that for you. They'll do the monthly Tuesday updates automatically. They'll spin up a new virtual machine, put your instance on there, and then transfer all of your traffic to that so that they can take your current virtual machine down and apply the patches that they need. They do all of that for you.
Well, they can, right? I mean, because I
Yeah.
think they have a scale of how much managed services they'll provide, right?
What do you mean?
Well,
The-
I was thinking that you have the option of having them provide those services, but then you can do it all yourself.
Yes, yes. If you want to do it all yourself, you're doing a virtual machine. But if you want them to do it, you pick one of their platform as a service options, which Azure Websites is one of those. Correct. Yep. So as I mentioned, server or Windows Server, Linux, you can set up a virtual private networking on your or between your virtual machines up in the cloud. You can also connect that through VPN down to your local office. So, for example, it would feel as if these are just boxes that are sitting in your server room, even though they're not. Most IT departments don't mind that, or at least they're much more receptive to that. So let's see what we get. All right, so for virtual machines, where'd my website go? All right. Let's zoom in. Most everything you do is off of this little plus button, which is hiding now, at the bottom. So let me rewind. I meant to show you one other really cool feature with websites. I showed you how to get started off of your local machines, how to publish from Visual Studio up into the cloud. There's one other way that you can do it that is, I think, really cool, personally. It goes back to you need a dev environment, a test environment, a QA environment, particularly with testing and QA. We all, as developers, we write something, we check it in, and then somebody has to go update the QA test environment and then go tell your QA person, okay, I got this done, you can go test it. Azure offers a hook that, depending upon where you have your source code, will expedite that, let's say, for you. If you go off of websites, if you do a custom create, and I need to give it a URL here so I can get to the next screen, LA site foo, and we're going to put it in the East region, no database, but there's this little option, publish from source control. And that gives you another little panel here which gives you the ability to hook into where's your source code provided. Is it Visual Studio Online, also known as TFS? Is it GitHub? Is it Dropbox, Bitbucket, which we at LA use, or some other place? I have a little repository out in GitHub. Oops, OK. I'm already authenticated, so it skipped over that one step. If you weren't, it would ask you to log in. But there is, as you can see, there's a list here of my repositories on GitHub. And I have a Hello World. And that website has multiple branches. It has a master, which generally is what you have in production. It has a develop, which is generally what you as developers are working in. And it has a UAT. Of course, that's for QA purposes. So you can, in here, specify which branch you want this to be looking at. So we can say UAT, hit check, and it is creating our new website. And in hopefully just a few seconds here, that will be ready. There we go. And then there's a deployments tab, which, as you can see, this guy is fetching the latest code out of, in this case, GitHub. It will compile those changes on some machine and then deploy that version to your website.
What about the database scripts?
That I think you still have to do on your own. I believe if you're using TFS or Visual Studio Online, they're going to make it easier. Yeah, to be able to make changes like that. So now usually this goes a little bit faster, but I think you get the point. And then in this particular case, there's a hook. So Azure is receiving a message from your source control, in this case, GitHub, that a commit has been made. Azure then goes, gets the latest, rebuilds, and publishes. So it does this automatically. You don't have to do all of that extra work, for example, that we're all accustomed to.
What if it breaks the build?
If it breaks the build, I think it tells you that. Maybe that's what I've got here. OK. History, well, the website is stopped. It thinks my website is stopped. So sometimes this doesn't always work. Oh, no. OK. I think it did work. Maybe it wasn't quite started yet. So this should, again, there you go. All right. Generally, like I said, pretty quick. Every now and then there's a hiccup in the, or a speed bump in the road.
Is there like
try it
an
again.
API that you could go into and would tell you broke the build? You could then do an announcement or something?
I think there is. I'm not sure.
Or can we plug in something like Vincity?
But yes, you can. You could use, for example, I think TeamCity as their provider on their own, either your own machine or their own, and then pull from that. So, for example, you could create a virtual machine, load TeamCity there, and then point this to that repo. You could do something like that, or locally, or yes. Yeah, and Visual Studio Online is adding that capability, where it's got those additional continuous integration steps to do the testing, to run the test scripts and go, yes, it's good, or no, it's bad.
It's cool.
Oh, that's very cool. I don't recommend doing this type of hook for production, of course. I think you want to press the button when you want to go to production. But for everything outside of production, I think this is really cool, because your website's just automatically up and running, and you can roll back. If I did another commit, it gives you just a list here of the deployments, and you can very easily say, okay, the latest one didn't work, let's go back to the prior one.
You go back and get, or you get back to the Azure UI?
Through the Azure UI, through that, through this screen right here, there will be multiple, oh, there you go. There's a little bit more history. There would be multiple entries on this screen, and one of the options would allow you to do a rollback.
If you recommend the repository to the beginner, which one is better, GitHub or the Visual Studio Online?
It depends upon what you need, I guess. If you are an individual and you are doing an open source project, GitHub is incredibly friendly with that particular use case. Visual Studio Online could be pretty friendly with that use case. Once you start looking at corporations and enterprises, they don't necessarily like their source code to be publicly available. So with GitHub, you have to pay for private, whereas with Bitbucket, you don't have to pay for private. If your team is small enough, it's free, and you can have an unlimited number of private repositories for up to 5 users for free. Visual Studio Online, I believe, offers a similar kind of arrangement. Again, I think it's like up to 3 users.
Right, and limited projects too.
Okay, and limited projects. So they very similar. It all depends on, honestly, personal preference and what you're doing
I
with
think
it.
GitHub charges you for how many privates you have. So like a company like ours with a lot of repositories, GitHub was way expensive. And Bitbucket for us was an easier choice because we have a lot of repositories, and then you pay for the number of seats, the number of developers.
Mm-hmm. All right, now, moving ahead to virtual machines, you can very easily create a very large list of options. And I will try to zoom in just a little more, if that helps. As you can see, you have several different cases of Windows Server, and then we get into a whole bunch of Linux options. But you also have a gallery. Now, what you're seeing here are the features available if you have an MSDN subscription. If you don't have an MSDN subscription, you're not going to see all of these options available to you. In particular, or for example, if you don't have an MSDN subscription, the only one that you see is this very top, excuse me, no, it'd be this one here. They've changed it. Cool. It would be the 2015 preview is, I believe, the only Visual Studio virtual machine pre-built offer. But MSDN subscription, you get bunches of options, tons. So if you've got MSDN, definitely use the same ID when you register with Azure. But as you can see, this is a perfect example. They don't recommend right now that you necessarily install 2015 on your production machine. It doesn't have a Go Live license yet, or I don't believe it does. So this is the perfect case for spinning up a VM. What's that, about half-day process if you do it yourself. In this particular case, it's only about, on average for me, it's been about 7 minutes. So I will LA 2015, we'll do a basic on, we'll do 1 core, and you can see that there are, everything, of course, is priced on which version you do. So basic has a shared core option up to 8 cores. Standard has, again, shared core all the way up to 16 cores. You're gonna be doing some major computing, hopefully, on that. So we'll get this. And next. Oh, I have too many characters. How about that? Okay, now it's asking for some configuration, generally create a new cloud. This is how you would reference it. So it's taking the name that you have, .cloudapp.net. That would be a name you could use. We don't want it in Europe. We want it in the US. And if you wanted an availability set, in other words, if you want to guarantee that there's always one or multiple instances running, you can create an availability set. And then endpoints. Endpoints, of course, is, what ports do you want to open up? So if you want to use this as a web server, if you're going to take an application and deploy it here and manage that web server on your own, like we're all familiar with, you would want to add things like HTTP here, and it'll open up port 80 automatically. And finally, some of the newer interesting items is using Puppet or Chef to manage your instance. If you would like to add some malware protection, they offer that. In this case, we're not going to do any of that. And hit Start. And we'll continue with the presentation, but in about, like I said, roughly 7 minutes, that's about the average that it's taking. It's got basically in the background, it's taking and making a copy of an image that's already out there, sticking it in some blob storage. That's what they call their disk space. Stick it in blob storage. Then they need to find a server that's or a rack that's available to hook that up and connect the VHD instance in Hyper-V, connect it to that blob storage, and spin all of this up. It takes a little bit of time. While that's running, we will let's talk about one of the cool things that I think Microsoft offers. Others do this too, if you want. It's called portability. You know, say you have some images in your data center now, and you wanna stop managing that on your own. If you are using Hyper-V and your VHDs are in a VHD format, which is the key, you can take the image, so image your laptop, image off of a virtual machine in your data center. You could take it and just copy it up to Azure and start it up, and it will work. Or be alternately, this virtual machine that I'm building right now for Visual Studio. Maybe I don't want to run that always up in Azure because that costs money. So maybe over the weekend I'm going to travel. I want to bring it with me. So you can copy it down. As long as it's in a VHD format, you can even go to third-party vendors or providers and move them between there. So it's very flexible in what you can do. In other words, your IT guys are probably going to like it.
How about domain name setting? You move to the other
Well, yeah, if you move, your IP address is going to change, so you would need to update your DNS setting to point to a different IP. Yes. Yep, that always changes. We talked about endpoints. Once you, of course, enable the port 80, you can get to your IIS box. Let's see if this has created yet. That probably wasn't quite time. No, it's still provisioning. So any other questions about VMs before we move on? No? Like I said, this is very similar to what Amazon offers. You can get a virtual machine there. It's not a VHD image, though. They use, what do they use? Something else. All right, so we'll let that run. Let's jump ahead to command line tools. Oh, go ahead.
So if I want to provide like a Silverlight application from the cloud, so in that case, I have to purchase I have to go with the virtual machine or just website?
With Silverlight, I think you can do that in a website. I think they offer that. That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, if nothing else, you can definitely run it in a virtual machine. But of course, no, I think you can because the Silverlight doesn't have any server-side components. That's all local. That's all on the browser.
I mean, it should be working with a WCF if I provide some service. The server side, WCF is in server side, right? So my question was that. So Silverlight client,
Okay.
the client side.
Yes.
So I want to make the application, the Silverlight work with the server.
Oh, the WCF.
Yeah.
Oh no.
WCF.
Yes, that works. Yeah, that's on the. As far as I know, yes. Yes.
You go with the virtual machine, right?
No, I think you could do that in a website. I think you can do a WCF website in
Okay.
because it's the ASP.NET Stack. So that's what they offer.
Anything you host in IIS is a website to Azure,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything that you can do in IIS, you can do in Azure.
Okay.
And a website in Azure, you don't need the virtual.
Correct.
Now clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking, if you do the Silverlight website up there, yeah, that's just running locally on your
Yeah,
machine.
right, yeah.
But yeah, that ASP.NET Web API, you can do that.
Mhm.
If you want to stick your data in Node or something, that's an option. Like I said, there's a lot of flexibility. Okay. So command line tools, everything that we've done, all of the website functionality, all of the Visual Studio functionality, all of that is available to you through a command line tool. So you can create your own Windows PowerShell scripts and run those, which we all know we should be scripting our deployment and publishing process. We shouldn't be right-clicking on the project and saying publish. It should be a script. We're all good. There's also a cross-platform command line, what they call XPlat. That is Node, a Node-backed command line, which I'll show you in a minute because I really like that one. Everything runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Don't worry, whatever flavor of OS you want, they got you covered. And you can see right down on the bottom there, in order to install the XPlat tools, just type npm install -g for global Azure CLI. That will get your Node set up, or you can go to the website and you can download an installer from the Azure Downloads page. So command line tools. As I said, from PowerShell, there are just hundreds of little commandlet commands that allow you to get information, create new resources, remove resources, save and set things. Everything you can possibly want is a command through PowerShell. Now, unless you are a PowerShell guru or really like this, I would use more of a script to use these commands. So in this particular case, here is an example script that creates a new Azure website, creates a SQL database, and of course anything else you want to do. All I have to do is run this, providing a few parameters, and this will automatically do the work for you that you don't have to log in to the website or go to new website out of Visual Studio. So this sets up your environment.
This is how you deploy your database scripts,
No, this is just setting up.
like a DAC pack.
Yeah, the publishing you would do as a separate step. Here, using this one, so this will actually, find the beginning of my script again. This script actually goes out and does a MS build and a publish automatically after the build is complete.
So you load the script in Azure and it runs it every time.
No, this is on your local machine.
Is there a way you can make like a postscript that gets run after it does a build each time?
I think there is. I want to say that there is the ability for you to set that up somehow in your code, like when your website starts.
What would be really cool is you'd have a PowerShell script that would deploy the DAC back updates to the database or something.
Okay. Yeah. Haven't tried that yet.
Cool.
I think the CI for SQL Server.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Now, like I said, I kind of like the Node interface. If you're going to be just typing commands and making changes, but you're a command line person rather than a website person, I think the Node interface is a little bit nicer because it gives you a little more feedback. Plus, it's got pretty ASCII art that you can tell some interns spent a lot of time working on. But all you do is when you log into Node and after you get your credentials set up, that is one step you have to do, both for PowerShell and for Node. There's some online documentation on how to get your credentials set up correctly. All you have to do, as you can see, is type Azure. Let me see if I can zoom in. Type Azure at the top, and it gives you some help automatically. So we can say like Azure, the websites are called site, and then list. And what this does is goes and gets information, and then will show you same information that the portal offers. In this case, we have two websites running. So from here, I can do different things like scaling. It's all pretty easy. I think you can just do HELP, and it will show you, well, there's help. If you don't know what options are available, it'll walk you through the process. I think that was it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, there. Leave the help off. You can do things, as you can see, anything you want. Diagnostics, scaling. If you want to scale your site up, for example, you would say Azure sites scale instances, and then say how many instances you want for that particular website. So if you want to make it multiples, 2s, 3s, 4s, of course, you need to not have it set on the free version first. So you'd have to, and I think it'll prompt you and say, oh, you're on the free plan, you can't scale. So it'll tell you. The Node has much more interactive feedback, as you can see, whereas the PowerShell is really great for having a PowerShell script that does several steps for you. All right, any questions on that?
One of the options there in the help and Node, I guess, was to manage your web jobs.
Yes.
What kind of jobs are those
The
you can set up?
Yeah, the web jobs is basically a background worker. It's a light version of a background worker that could be listening. Maybe your website has a queue. People enter data. You put the data into a queue, and then you can have the web job looking at that queue to perform some unit of work on it. Yes, it's a kind of a really cool feature. It's pretty simple. It's basically just what is it? A command prompt. So whatever you can script and put it in an infinite loop and just keep looping on your queue or whatever. Maybe you have a web job that every morning at 4 or 5 a.m. you blow out your database and create a new one, something like that. You can do quite a bit from there. Any API commands, Azure API commands, are available to you. And if, I was going to say, that's actually a pretty good lead-in. If, for example, a web job doesn't meet your needs or something like that, then you can get into more complex options or more feature-rich options in Azure, such as rather than a simple queue, maybe you need a service bus, Azure Service Bus, or Azure BizTalk, even, which gives you a lot more pub sub and subscription capabilities. So there's a lot more we haven't even begun to cover. Like I said, you can spend weeks trying to learn everything that's available. One of the really cool things is that you have the ability. Azure offers you a lot of flexibility, so your use cases, whatever they may be for, it can help address it. You don't have to wait weeks for a SQL database. You can spin one up in seconds, or a website, or a VM, or heaven forbid, SharePoint or BizTalk server. Those are big, multi-machine. They've got images, they'll spin one up and have it up and running in no time. So, get started, again, azure.microsoft.com. And for some resources, a lot of information is available on Azure. A lot of videos, of course. The documentation center off of Azure is pretty good. Microsoft's really working to try to improve the documentation. I won't say it's perfect, but generally there's a document out there that will help you get over something as long as you're not bleeding edge. And it's all available, of course, in multiple languages. Azure Fridays, if you guys know Scott Hanselman, he has a series called Azure Fridays, and they are very short, focused videos on a particular topic. For example, 4 days ago, Azure Service Bus 104, so already past the 101 introductory. That's a great resource. Getting started videos off of, again, the Azure website. They have a getting started. These are 1 minute and 58 seconds on how to get signed into Azure. And it walks you through the process. Now, like I said, mine took about half a day. It took 4 hours to get my trial set up, but they did it in 1 hour or 1 minute and 48 seconds. And they talk about virtual machines and websites. One thing I didn't mention, Azure is on GitHub, which means it's open source. So if you have a question about how Azure works, You want to look at the code? It's there. It's available. So if there's something annoying you, you can find it. And if it's a bug, you can submit a pull request. They welcome that.
Has it always been on GitHub?
Yes. Maybe not initially, but it's been on for a while.
What's their license?
Not sure. On their code? Let's look at like mobile services. Apache 2.0. It's pretty flexible. Then another one that I found that I really enjoyed, Building Cloud Apps with Microsoft Azure by Scott Guthrie. This is a book. It is also a video from Tech Ed Australia 2013, I think, is when this video was. So it's a little more than a year old, but it's still really, really good information. Of course, you can download the ebook right here. But this, he walks you through, I think it is 13 things to keep in mind if you want to move your applications to the cloud, or you want to build an application in the cloud. You know, one of the things he points out is, you know, we as good developers create scripts to do our builds and publishes and deployments, right? Of course. And then check that into source control. So things like that. A lot of points to remember before you get going. And of course, there's a lot more than that, but these are the ones that I really found very helpful and useful. So,
with the free account, you get access to like SQL Azure when you're creating a website.
yes, you have access to everything with the free trial. So if you want to create SQL databases in Azure, if you want to create websites, if you want to do, I think you could do the machine learning if you want to dig into that.
You get the full-blown SQL server.
I think so, because it's all just compute power. They're just, you get $200 of free compute. So if you want to use it, they'll let you use it.
Is it a source code public? Like if I publish, is the code itself?
That you publish?
Right.
No. It depends upon where your source code is located. Like if you're doing it from a private repository, then no. They're just doing a pull request to get that and then build it on the virtual machine that they have.
How can I deploy the database and look into the Azure?
That would probably be another talk in and of itself. Yeah, databases are.
It's simple, just click and deploy.
Yeah, databases are another beast entirely. I think they're still honestly working on making that easier. I think their goal is to be able to do migrations, data importing. I could be wrong, but I don't think they're there yet.
They're very close.
Yeah.
They're DAG packs and they're database projects. There's a lot of stuff they can't do automated because they don't know what to do because you've got both structure and data potentially there. But I think they give you all the hooks and redeployment, push deployment, right? You know, anything you need to make this an automated process. And that's in the latest. getting better at it.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't worked with the databases yet. I think for my particular client, I won't be able to put the data up in Azure. So one of the things there are regulatory concerns. Even though they probably could do it, I don't think they will do it. So, right. So I'm thinking maybe have a either WCF or Web API site that's exposed publicly that you can then connect to.
That was one thing I was wondering about, was, having worked in healthcare for so long, with all the HIPAA restrictions, I know that was one of the things that was just
Yeah.
totally off the table. Data doesn't go not in the cloud.
Well, they've got government focused regions. So, yeah, I think as they evolve, as they grow, they'll have those compliant regions or compliant data centers available that will guarantee the security that whoever it is wants. Anything else?
You looked into big data on Azure, and noticed it's an option. Do they provide nodes and maybe software?
Yeah, I have not looked into that. But yes, Azure does provide big data options. They're using
Hadoop.
Hadoop, thank you.
Map reviews?
Mhm. Yep. So they've got it, but I'm not even going to try to
think
venture
that-
into that
The
territory.
new document database too. The Azure
New
document
database, yep. They have Azure Document Database. They've got machine learning. They're constantly updating. I think Scott Guthrie said during one of his presentations that they deploy a minimum of once a day. And it's, it might not be a big feature set, but it's a little feature. Every single day there's something new being added. So they're working on it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.